DTFX.
Once again, here is Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your hosts, Dustin Lunt and Jake Trowbridge.
Whoa, what's going on there? Wrong side of the screen. There. The world is all right now. Welcome back, everyone. It's on Tuesday. We're recording live. Thank you for joining us. If you are joining us live, I'd like to get that pre-thanks out there. And for everyone out there listening to us after the fact, come join us live. It's a lot more fun here, where we'll be interactive. You can ask us questions. But thank you anyway for listening if you listen to us after the fact. I do appreciate it. If you don't already know, we are DTFF, and we are back here doing our thing, back with our recap series, part 3 of 4, since there's 4 of the major skill positions, we could say.
3.5 of the major skill positions, but we managed to stretch it out into 4 full ones.
Yeah, that's right. Before we get into that, though, we're talking tight ends, but before we get into it, Jake, my co-host, how goes it tonight?
Man, I'm here. I have beer. I have very minimal fear. So that all translates into something good, I think. I have minimal fear about having to talk about tight ends tonight, but I think I can get over it in time for some good quality conversation. I'm also interested in the bold predictions review because I'll be honest, I forgot a lot of those, and it might be a defense mechanism that I forgot them. We'll see. But I am excited because the game of all games is this weekend.
That's
Super
right.
Bowl is here. So how excited are you on a level of 1 to, let's say, Jeff Goldblum finding a cup of coffee?
Jeff Goldblum finding a cup of coffee? Can I say?
Yeah, because he's already excited anyways, but then he gets a cup of coffee in him,
I will say I am Jeff Goldblum finding out that the dinosaurs escaped. I don't know. I don't know what the sliding scale is.
So
here.
even a little trepidatious. You don't know the Goldblum scale, and that's fine. That's on me for not priming you for that. God, I would assume there's a lot.
How dare you embarrass me in front of our hundreds of listeners?
It's what I love. But no, I don't know. I'm excited. Do you have how about this? Do you have one prediction for the Super Bowl? Not necessarily who's going to win or lose, but just like a thing that'll happen for the Super Bowl. Do you have any of those?
I'm going to predict that there is going to be 3 special guests at the halftime show for Rihanna.
Do you have an idea of at least who one of those are?
No.
Nope. Do you just think volume?
Just 3. Yep, just 3. Because she's a solo artist. And they always have the special guests pop in there. I feel like it's going to be 3 this year.
I don't even know who Rihanna has duetted with on songs. I don't know. I don't know enough of her catalog, and I feel ashamed to say that. Maybe Pitbull will come out. I don't know. That seems like a thing that could happen.
Yeah, and maybe
he could be anywhere at any time.
Maybe he'll shout out our not sponsor Fireball too.
One can only hope. Well, Dustin, what are you drinking tonight, by the way?
I am drinking a homebrew this evening. I'm drinking my 3-year-old barley wine. It's on the lighter side for a barley wine. It's only like 8.5%, where a lot of barley wines are like 12-14%. So mine's down in the ABV, still a decent alcohol percentage, but it's mellowed out nicely over these few years. I found a case of Bombers that I kind of forgotten about, and I'm going to do my best the rest of this winter to drink those up.
I love it. I think you accidentally or not accidentally actually left one in my fridge pretty recently.
That was not an accident.
Good. Okay. Because I drank it all. Actually, that's not true yet, but I will be drinking it all now that I know that. I'm not drinking that now, and now I wish I had brought that up because that would have been much better. I'm drinking just a standard old pale ale from Delta Beer Lab, who I love, but it's just a medium pale ale, nothing that exciting. Nothing that enthralling, but it does the job.
And that's all that matters at the end of the day.
It really is, by golly. We don't have any beer bets to recap this week, do we? I don't think we had the opportunity.
No, we did not make any bets on the Pro Bowl games.
Can't believe that.
Although when we were golfing on Sunday, they had it on the TV right outside our little booth there. So I was catching bits and pieces. Seemed entertaining. I like that it's just random games now and not an actual emphasis on a football game. It's like, because nobody was taking it seriously anyway. Might as well, it's at least entertaining this way. And we know going in that they're out there just fucking around having a good time. So it's like, I am here for that piece of it at least.
Yeah, it was a little bit more like the Nickelodeon approach to football. And honestly, I was completely fine with
it was great. I enjoyed it way more than I've enjoyed any other Pro Bowl in recent years.
Yeah, I don't know the last time that I've watched real bits of a Pro Bowl.
Oh, and I couldn't tell you. It's probably the early aughts.
I think that's appropriate. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Well, do we want to look? I know we don't have an official drunk trade for this week. We were talking about that at the start of the show.
Mm-hmm.
You know why, listeners? Because you haven't sent them. That's why. So if you wouldn't mind sending them going forward, we will discuss your drunk trade on air and maybe even like it. Yeah. As a thank you for sending it in, we will talk about it. But I was thinking we could do a segment live on air potentially of me, now that I am a few drinks in, a couple of beers in, I should say, trying to make a trade in my league. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. In lieu of the official drunk trade, let's do Jake's. I don't even have a good title for it. Jake's semi-sober
We'll come up
trade.
with it in post. Don't worry. The people listening at home will never know.
Never.
All right.
So lay it on us here.
So the drunk, whatever. In the midst of drinking trade, I have this league. It's my favorite league. I know you're not really supposed to play favorites, but like for dynasty leagues, this is my tops. So don't worry, our home league is excluded. That's redraft. I'm talking dynasty here.
Mm-hmm.
It is the affectionately named Chicks versus Dicks League. Has some of my favorite people of all time in this. There are 6 lads, 6 ladies in this thing. And I got this trade. I'm in this situation right now, Dustin. I'll lay it on you. It's a 12-teamer, super flex, tight end premium, all the fixins. And I'm at a situation, I didn't win last year. I really wanted to go all in and just try. I made some midseason trades. I acquired James Conner. I acquired Josh Jacobs. I picked up even Adam Thielen just as like an old look. I need somebody in here. I traded for Dalton Schultz as a tight end. Like I made moves that were not the youngest of moves. Mm-hmm. And now I'm at a situation where I got an old as balls team. That's what I'm looking at. Josh Jacobs, by far the youngest person on my team. He's like 24, turning 25. Everybody else of consequence is much older. So,
and do you feel like you're still competing? And you want to make the push, or are you trying to like retool and get younger?
I am definitively in the middle, which is a terrible place to be.
Worst
the only place you don't want to be. And here's why. It's a super flex league. Here's my quarterback situation. It's Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. That's my quarterback situation. So this year, am I competing? I don't know. When's Kyler going to be back? Is there going to be
not till middle of the year? I mean, let's be honest. It's going to be.
And will Sean Payton be able to make Russell Wilson a viable fantasy quarterback? I don't know.
Can it get worse? Can it get worse?
No,
I don't think so.
But can it get a lot better? I don't know.
And
so here's my conundrum. All right. I'm looking to offload, at least while I'm figuring out what to do. I do want to get rid of some of these older players because I feel like that's okay. Like I can get rid. I have DeAndre Hopkins. I have Brandon Cooks. I have Keenan Allen. I have Stephon Diggs. I have Adam Thielen. All right. I have these older guys here. I do have like Rashad Bateman. You know, he's a fairly young guy for a receiver. But I'm looking to move maybe DeAndre Hopkins and or Adam Thielen. So here's the trade that I sent out. But you helped me workshop this because you've gotten trades from me before. You know how frustrating that can be. So
It's true.
I sent this trade to somebody who had expressed curiosity in these older gents. And I was like, all right, well, instead of DeAndre Hopkins, who they initially showed interest in, I said, how about Adam Thielen? So this was my offer initially. I sent Adam Thielen and a 2024 third round pick, because I don't have any 2023 picks. I burned them all to hell in exchange for a 2024 second round pick. So Thielen and a third for a second. I thought that was pretty good, right? I mean, Thielen's like 33, but for 1 year.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair, right? He wasn't having it, and that's okay. Came back. The most recent counter was Adam Thielen for the 409. Now, I am fighting the urge to do the auto decline or leave it hang out there for eternity and never do anything with it just to send a message. But in favor of actually getting something done, here's what I'm thinking, Dustin. Tell me how far off base I would be here. So the person who's wanting to trade, stacked with running backs, absolutely stacked, but getting older. Aaron Jones, Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley, Leonard Fournette, Kareem Hunt, Zeke Elliott, like a lot of aging running backs, but not much to work with for wide receiver. A couple of big ones like Devontae Adams, Juju Smith-Schuster. That's great, but then really trails off.
Okay.
So I said, all right, you want Thielen? You can have Thielen. You want DeAndre Hopkins? You can have him. I'm going to send you both of those two guys. And in exchange, what I want is to get a little bit younger at wide receiver, but he doesn't have that option and he doesn't have a lot of picks. So I'm just going to push all the picks out. DeAndre Hopkins, Adam Thielen for a 2024 second, a 2025 first round pick, and maybe, this was a bridge too far, Aaron Jones. Think that's too much.
Yeah. I don't think you'd get Aaron Jones. I think you could get it. You should be able to get it done with just the picks in those two players. I'm not a big fan of pushing out until 2025 at this point.
I don't either, but I figured that was a good enough distance for value, right?
I know. I mean, because you should be able to get Hopkins for like a late first yet, I would think, or maybe a couple of seconds. Because he's still going to produce well. Like, I still think he's got a couple years, and I think he could transition into the Larry Fitzgerald mold too, where he's a very good, have some very good like wide receiver 2 years as like a possession type receiver. So I think he's got like a few good years left in him. Maybe not wide receiver 1 years, but I feel like he's got a few good solid seasons left at a minimum. So I feel like you should be able to get a first, especially this next year. I see him finishing as a top 12 wide receiver.
Now, here's a caveat. They don't have a 2024 first.
I know. I get that.
But I could open this thing and say, you know what, Ethan, I'm not trading with you. I'm going to other suitors, and I could be the guy who puts DeAndre Hopkins on the trade block and just says, what do we want? If my expectation is a 2024 first round pick for DeAndre Hopkins, I could see if anybody's willing to do that first.
I would put any 24 first in your trade bait in the comments and just see what happens. Because someone I think will give you that.
Okay.
Especially someone that's competing. I mean, I think that's a fair price to pay for 2-3 years worth of production.
And I may not get it until it's decided where DeAndre Hopkins goes this offseason, until they know for sure what the team outlook is. That might be a thing where I have to wait and see. Right. But I do like the idea of it. I will not get away Adam Thielen for the 409, though. No. That is insulting. That is insensitive. I refuse. So I will decline, partly out of spite. Here's one that I sent, though. We'll do this a little bit and then we'll move on. I sent one out, Matthew Betts, also in this league. He's looking to trade George Pickens. You tell me how close I am, or if I'm crazy to do this. or if I'm crazy like a fox. I sent Deebo Samuel. This is my offer, still standing out. Deebo Samuel. In return, I will get George Pickens in a mid-second pick. What do you think?
So Deebo for Pickens and a second?
Yep. Is
I
that
would
too
do that.
too light?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I mean, I love Deebo. It's hard to see where this offense is going to go next year. Is Trey Lance going to be the guy? Is it going to be Brock Purdy? Is it going to be Jimmy G? Like, we don't know. Ayuk had a surprisingly quietly strong season this year. Deebo does get dinged up where he misses, a game or two. Assuming health from Kittle, he was coming on towards the end of the season. You have CMC there. So that kind of cuts down on Deebo's rushing upside.
Right.
So I don't know. I really like Deebo, and he's an electric playmaker. But you're getting younger with Pickens.
Yep.
And you're getting a second on top of it. So I like that. I think that's fair. I would do that.
Well, fingers crossed. If you're listening, Matthew, and I hope you are, please accept that, because that would be wonderful for both of us. That would be maybe the most fair drunk trade I've ever been a part of, if that goes through. So I'll keep everyone posted.
Yes. Review in a couple weeks here.
I love it. All right, we can move off of the drunk trade shenanigans.
Okay. So let's get into the tight ends then. Same thing as the last couple weeks. I will start us off here by going through the top 12 overall rank. We won't do points per game. We can get into that minutia later as we talk about the tight ends, but we'll just go overall rank 1 through 12. We won't go further than that because let's be honest, really no need to go outside the top 3. So, right. But just because we'll do the top 12. So we've got Kelsey, Hawkinson, Kittle, Andrews, Ingram, Higbee, Freiermuth, Kmet, Taysom Hill, Dalton Schultz, Njoku, and Dallas Goedert rounding out the top 12. So, Jake, I think it's safe to say Travis Kelce, stud amongst boys here. He outscored in total points over 100 points to the number 2 tight end. Like, that is just fucking crazy.
That's
how
big
much
time.
He scored.
You got on average 5+ more points per game out of Travis Kelce than the number 2 guy. Mm-hmm. What the hell?
Yeah, that is.
We've talked. We've given our lashes about the Travis Kelce and our mistakes that were made, obviously, last season.
We'll discuss it a little bit more here when we talk about our bold predictions, because that happened to be one of mine. But I mean, I don't think there's any reason to say he is not going to be number 1 until he's just not anymore. Like, he's going to be one of those guys. He'll probably play for another 5 years. He'll be one of those Antonio Gates type players that plays at a super high level until maybe like the last couple seasons, but will be a tight end 1, like basically his entire career. And I don't see that ever changing.
I think when the cliff hits, it's going to hit really hard, but I'm not going to be the person who tries to predict it at this point. Now I'm just going to ride out the wave. I've learned my lessons from the Tom Brady situation and all that. Like, I'm just going to ride this thing out. Yep.
He's going to die on my squad, and I'm okay with it. I will take all those points while he's giving them to me. Like there's just don't overthink it. Just for next redraft season, don't overthink it. Take him in the late first, early second, if you so choose.
He's a top 6 pick for me. I'm telling you, in redraft next year, I'm going back to that. I'm going back to 2021 version of my assessment with him.
Yeah,
so
and I don't think you're not going to be in any sort of trouble there. I don't think.
Yep.
Barring injury, of course. But I want to talk about some of these surprise names here. With Hawkinson at number 2. Had a very strong season after the trade to Minnesota. I think that we're going to continue to see that. I think that's a good fit in the good system for him. They actually brought him in for a reason, and they showed that. So I like the situation he's in moving forward. Kittle, missed a couple games, still tight end 3 overall. Gotta love that. Andrews, again, missed a couple games, right there, number 4. Do you think that this is like a solid like top 4, or I should say Kelsey's like a tier by himself, and then there's this cluster of like the next 3. And would you put like Pitts in there or maybe Goddard? Just give me your thoughts here with this kind of next like mini tier of tight ends.
That's a great way of looking at it. Because yes, Travis Kelce definitely in his own tier, but this next group, I think it's fair if you want to lump the following guys all into one tier. And I can understand the argument. If you do Hawkinson, Kittle, Andrews, Pitts, and still if you want to put Darren Waller in there, I can get it. Right? He dealt with a lot of injuries this year.
That's fair. I kind of forgot about him.
Yeah, and it happens because he wasn't playing the whole season. And he did show enough, though, over the previous 3.5 seasons, I guess, to be like, all right, yeah, if he can suffer through one down season and still come back and be in that tier.
Yeah, because he's only going to be 30 going into next season, so
yeah,
not old as far as tight ends go.
Right, exactly right. And meanwhile, on the opposite end of the spectrum, Kyle Pitts, like super young and super disappointing. And we can talk about that quite a lot, but we were both having much higher hopes for him. Everybody basically was having higher hopes for him than what panned out. And I still maintain, you look at what he did last year compared to this year, hopefully coaching scheme, quarterbacking, those two things improve. Kyle Pitts can and hopefully should be in this tier. But do you agree that he should be in there by default, or is he lower than that for you?
I am twice bitten, 3 times as shy. Is that how it goes now? With Kyle Pitts, I've had him in redraft the last 2 years, and he has disappointed. I think when you're looking at dynasty, yeah, he's in that tier because of just his age, the dysfunction of that offense. Like until they get like a quarterback in there, an offensive line, maybe a coach that doesn't want to run the ball 50 times per game. I just, he's flashed and he had a very solid rookie season. It just, the reason why it wasn't all time is because he didn't score any touchdowns. It was the, kind of Julio Jones effect there in Atlanta. But I think for dynasty, yeah, you have to have him up there in that tier. But for redraft, unless it really depends kind of with free agency and the draft and what happens here with the Falcons. If they go out and get a veteran quarterback this offseason, or they draft one of say they move up and they draft one of the top quarterbacks early in this draft, maybe that would change my outlook a little bit for redraft. But say it stays the same, they're with Ritter or Mariota, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be willing to draft him that high in redraft, where you're going to have to draft him around with these other players we're talking about.
I think that's completely fair. And it also does lead up to a value draft spot for Kyle Pitts potentially next year based on this. I don't know that I'm going to be bold enough to take advantage of that perceived value. If he does fall, let's say he's in the 6th round. Like, do I draft him there? I don't know. It would feel like, based on last year's ADP, man, that's a damn steal. But you're right. If they ride into it with Desmond Ritter this year, I don't know how comfortable I'd be doing that. And I don't know what quarterback they would have to bring in for me to look at that seriously. If they bring in, for some reason, say Derek Carr finds his way to the Atlanta Falcons.
I don't know. Did you see the news that he's got permission to visit the Saints?
Oh, I did not see that.
Yeah, that was breaking this afternoon. Yeah. The Raiders gave him permission to talk to the Saints.
Well, that could
so
be
first possible domino falling. But it really I'm sure we'll talk about this ad nauseum come redraft season here at the end of the summer. But yeah, for now, I just can't see taking Pitts that early when there's so many question marks on that team.
I agree. Here's a lead in, because I want to talk about this guy, because in terms of surprises, he's the biggest one on this list for me based on the first half of the season, which is Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram manages to sneak his way in here into the top 7 of tight ends for points per game. And like, if you were a fan of the Jaguars offense, as we were going into the season, if you liked the idea of Evan Ingram as a late round tight end, as I did, Well, you were super disappointed come about week 6 when like nothing was happening, nothing good. It was terrible. You absolutely probably dropped the dude. I know I did. And then all of a sudden, 3 weeks later, he's the hottest thing going. And he's just dominating, which is really great to see for validation. But why couldn't that have happened sooner? And do we believe that it can happen again next year? So my question is, Kyle Pitts versus Evan Ingram for 2023 at the moment. Is that a real debate? Is that a real question right now for you?
I would still probably take Pitts over him, even with the draft capital involved. The reason for that is you have Calvin Ridley most likely coming back to the Jags, and he is an alpha. Christian Kirk, great season, good signing by the Jags. Don't get me wrong; this is not to besmirch Christian Kirk and his deeds he did this season, but he's not an alpha wide receiver. He is a great number 2. So you're going to have Calvin Ridley and then Christian Kirk with, I'm assuming Zay Jones sticks around, and he had a very solid season as well in this offense. Unless they really, you got ETN. So unless they really increase their passing volume, I don't see where Ingram can keep up the pace that he did this year. I think that was just a function of lack of explosive weapons on the team, and he just benefited from that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think if we're going to talk about tight ends in earnest today, we need to talk about the idea of what matters for their production. Does it matter for tight ends more specifically than other positions that a team is loaded or not loaded? Like, does it matter for Darren Waller that Devontae Adams went there? That Hunter Renfrow, if he had been healthy for the entirety of the season, that they had like an actual tandem? If they had a real third option, I mean, Josh Jacobs as a pass catcher for a running back, like, does that matter for a tight end or a guy like Darren Waller? Do we prefer that they have fewer weapons and a substantially worse offense because of it? Or do we prefer that they have more options and it's a better offense and hopefully they get more touchdowns? Like, I struggle with that on the daily.
I that sounds like a great like midsummer episode. We bring on someone much smarter than us that has crunched those numbers, and we can really dig into that conversation, because I think that's a very good conversation topic to have, and kind of what the stats or what the trends show for that. Because I think that would be interesting. It'd be very enlightening to see, does that make a difference or not?
I mean, obviously it doesn't for Travis Kelce. Weapons are weapons. It don't fucking matter for Travis Kelce. But like, I'm sure there's a subset of these guys that we're talking about,
right,
where it actually does really matter.
This kind of tight end 6 to 20 range, where it's just like, well, I mean, they're good football players. They're just not necessarily consistently involved in their offenses. But what are those things we should be looking for those guys that would possibly preclude them to have a breakout type season or a resurgence season like Ingram had this year?
Yes. We will bring on a tight end guru, maybe Andrew Cooper. He's a big tight end big studier of those ends. By the way, his too long didn't read version of this is like, if it's not Travis Kelce, you want one wide receiver and then they're the next guy. Like, that's his motif with it. So I'd be curious to see the data for that too. But maybe this leads into TJ Hawkinson. At least it does for me, because I didn't believe that the Minnesota Vikings would have a really valuable fantasy tight end. We saw what happened with Kyle Rudolph all those years ago. He was always like, I guess if you're desperate. Irv Smith never panned out the way that people wanted Irv Smith to pan out when he was the guy on the Vikings. And then TJ Hawkinson gets traded. I'm probably said it on this episode or on this podcast. Like, I'm out. I'm out on TJ Hawkinson. I don't trust it. Is this sample size enough for you to trust him next year?
Yes.
Yeah. You're lying.
Here's why. Because both Detroit and Minnesota had a stud wide receiver, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yeah.
Very good running backs, Swift, Dalvin Cook. Very non-flashy quarterback in Cousins and Goff. Offensive line, probably a little bit of a downgrade for Minnesota as opposed to Detroit, but it's not like Minnesota's offensive line is terrible by any means. So when you start looking at like offensive weapons versus offensive weapons, it's fairly comparable. I think you can make the argument that they're fairly comparable. It comes down to scheme and coaching, really, at that point, and execution of plays. Well, obviously, as I said earlier, Minnesota had a plan for him. They wanted him, and they executed that, and they made him a focal point of that offense. Whereas in Detroit, for whatever reason, he was just never a focal point of that offense, even after being highly drafted as he was.
Yeah, I think to your point, and maybe what we're talking about of the hierarchy of targets and depth charts and all that, maybe it doesn't really matter. Maybe all that matters is what do they think about this tight end? Is the tight end good enough that they're like, we're going to make sure to work you into the game plan? Because if you're not, none of this matters.
Mm-hmm.
None of it's relevant. And I think what my mental block was when he was with Detroit, it just felt like maybe he's not that great of a tight end.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he's not the prospect everybody thought that he was. Because he's
Absolutely.
not showing it in Detroit, especially when there weren't that many options to throw to like last year. And he just wasn't doing it. But it's all about the scheme. It's all about the coaching, like you said. So I do think that's interesting. And I do think that TJ Hawkinson might as well be Travis. He's almost as good.
Maybe TJ is short for Travis. Maybe it's like Travis James.
God. I hope so. Travis James Hawkinson, the fourth, is going to be on my radar for sure next year. I just hope that it doesn't bite me in the ass. It could.
Here's the thing with him though. Even though he finished as tight end 2 overall, come redraft next year, people are not going to remember that he finished tight end 2. They're going to remember that he had some very big games. Like he had a couple like 40-point games, one with Detroit and like one with Minnesota, which I think really helped bump up his stats for the season. But no one's going to remember he finished that well. They're going to be like, oh yeah, he had a good season. He was, a mid-range tight end 1, because there's still that stigma of him in Detroit. And like I said, I just think next year you're going to be able to get him. You're not going to have to pay up for him. Let's put it that way. Where if you're going to lump him in the tier with Kittle and Pitts and Andrews and Waller, those guys, you're not going to have to. He's probably going to be at the bottom of that tier where you're going to be able to get him at the end of that run of tight ends and not have to pay up for them.
Yeah, and I do think Kittle and Andrews will probably be ahead of him in ADP. Almost
For sure. For sure.
And then
Pitts
it
will
might
probably
be a
be ahead of him.
competition. It might be a thing of Waller versus him in that range. Like that might be the situation we find in redraft. So for Dynasty then, TJ Hawkinson's pretty young. He's a young fella. And if we're looking at like third year breakouts, and if we want to consider that his essentially, well, I guess it would be his fourth year, but he's still super young. So is TJ Hawkinson headlining your trade targets for tight ends if you're looking for one in Dynasty?
Yes. Actually, I was, I know we were talking about it here Sunday when we were golfing, trying to make a trade in one of my leagues. And I was trying to get Hawkinson because I do believe that this is the real deal. Like he's going to be, no one's ever going to be the Kelsey level as long as Kelsey's in the league.
Right.
But he is someone you can rely on week in and week out, kind of a set it and forget it. He's going to give you a very solid floor. And then you've seen the spike weeks from him where he can go off for like 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. You'll have those weeks occasionally. Yeah. I mean, what's not to like about that?
Not much. I do think I would rather trade for him in Dynasty more than George Kittle, more than Mark Andrews, because I agree their perception of those players is still like they're so much more highly regarded, I think, than TJ Hawkinson. You have to give up a lot more to get them, especially Mark Andrews. And I feel maybe a little bit alone in this, but I've really soured on Mark Andrews as this like definitive top guy. Because I had the thought, again, we talked about it coming into the offseason, like Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, whoever, whichever, right? They're basically the same guy.
Yep.
Obviously, they are not. Say what you want about the quarterback situation. Lamar Jackson being there, not being there. But the year prior, Mark Andrews was better with a backup quarterback in there than he was for Lamar Jackson. Obviously, that didn't really bear out this year. I mean, he's still good. He was still great, honestly.
I
But
mean, he was a little banged up this year, and I think played through injury, which might have hampered it a little bit. And we know Lamar was out for a good chunk. And I know to try to just make your backup quarterback point there.
yeah, it wasn't great. But again, there were no options on this team. There was nobody to throw to. Rashad Bateman goes down after 6 weeks, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's a traveling circus of wide receivers there. They brought back Sammy Watkins late in the season for a push because that will solve everything. But Mark Andrews was really the lone guy there. And so he had spike weeks. He did. He had a couple of 100-yard games, and that was wonderful. Most of that came early in the season. Most of his production did. So I'm not buying him as like this elite tight end. I think he deserves to be in that category. But I would rather take whoever the lowest of that category is in ADP or draft.
Right. So how does your opinion on him change, say, if Lamar Jackson leaves this offseason and they roll out some other quarterback? Does it change at all? Or do you like him more with Lamar there?
I don't think it matters that much to me anymore.
Okay.
I don't think the quarterback situation is helping or hurting him necessarily at this point. As long as there's somebody competent throwing him the ball, I don't really care. I think what matters to me is, does their offensive scheme shift at all? Do they stop being the run heavy, tight end, crazy team where they'll actually start spreading it out to wide receivers? If they show that, then I'll start having real concerns for Mark Andrews. But as of right now, like, he is very good, and he should continue to be very good just because of the scheme in Baltimore.
All right, let's move on here, Jake, because I want to get into the bold predictions here, and I don't want us to go too long. But let's talk about some of these tight ends on the lower end here. Is there anyone that maybe you're looking at next year to take that jump, like Evan Ingram did, like David Njoku did this year? Anyone you're looking at that could make that leap to be a serviceable tight end? I'm not saying up into the top 3, but say you're punting come redraft next year, and you're like, these are the later round guys that I'm going for that I feel like are going to be solid contributors to my team for the next season.
In general, I'm going to stop pretending that I know about late round tight ends, because I don't. I never do. Again, the closest I got was Evan Ingram, I thought. And then he eventually that worked. But like, I don't know a consistent guy who I'm going to feel comfortable plugging in right away from this late round batch. The one guy who I'm very curious about is Cole Kmet, though. Cole Kmet did have that Evan Ingram type of thing of early in the year, atrocious, absolutely unusable, droppable after week 3. Well, then it comes later on, come week, I think it was week 8 through, he looked like a borderline stud, in terms of tight ends, at least. Like, he looked like he belonged right in the tier under those other guys that we just talked about. A lot of that was because of touchdowns. He just got a bunch more. But if that offense takes an actual step where they're like, we're going to get real talent here, we can make this offense move, we can give more opportunities to everybody because of that, I'm interested in Cole Kmet. If they get one stud wide receiver to bring in, great. That fits the theory. Take the one stud receiver. He can be the number 2 option potentially on the team, and he could be great. Do you have any interest in him?
I guess a little bit. I mean, he did finish number 8 overall, but 15th in points per game. So he obviously had some very big kind of boom weeks there. And like you said, he was complete trash to start the year. So if he kind of continues like we did, and I think, just agreeing with everything you just said, yeah, I could have some interest in him. One guy that I have some interest in next year who showed off some, again, He's very hit and miss, kind of like Cole Kmet. Didn't do much until later in the season, but that's Juwan Johnson with New Orleans. And I know part of that revolves around what's going to happen with Taysom Hill. If Taysom Hill sticks around, that kind of caps his upside. And I know we all thought Adam Troutman was going to be a thing a couple years ago. That hasn't materialized. Like Juwan Johnson was the guy this year. And he had some he was very consistent towards the end of the season. I know he scored a lot of touchdowns. He had like 3 multi-touchdown games or something this year, which really boosted his total points on the season. But when you look at it, I mean, he was 15th overall and 16th in points per game. So it's not like he finished top 12, but had super low points per game. I feel like he is a guy, he's very young. He could get much more involved in this offense, especially if there's a guy like Derek Carr comes over, who we've seen will throw to his tight ends. So, I mean, if something like that happens, I think he could be a sneaky good late round target for you.
I don't mind that at all. Is there any team right now harder to predict for fantasy assets than the Saints, by the way? Like that whole, I don't know anything.
Just give me Olave.
Wow.
That's all I want. Give me Chris
That's
Olave.
literally it.
That's it.
We don't know if Alvin Kamara is going to be playing, if he's going to be suspended for next year. We don't know who their quarterback is actually going to be. We don't know if Michael Thomas is coming back. Probably not, but maybe. It's just all bad. So yeah, Chris Olave or bust.
Yep. That's right. Anyone else you want to talk about here, Jake, before we move over to our bold predictions?
God, no. Let's stop talking about tight ends.
All right. If you guys want more tight end talk, just shoot us a DM. We'll get into conversation with you. But yeah, let's move on to our bold predictions here. So we did one, just to recap, one for every position. And Jake, do you want to start or shall I?
I'm happy to start because I actually think this first one, it's not as bad as I thought it might end up a little bit of the way through. I said the trio of Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Trevor Lawrence would outscore the trio of Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, and Derek Carr. Here's where I get into trouble. Trey Lance did not play at all. Or barely at all this season. I can't be held accountable for that, for a man who got injured. That's the trajectory of what I was saying, though. The heart of what I was saying, I actually do think bore out because we saw Justin Fields finish as quarterback 5. Trevor Lawrence was quarterback 8. Meanwhile, the older regime, they fell. Aaron Rodgers ended up doing better than I thought he would, honestly, at quarterback 14. Derek Carr sitting at quarterback 16. I mean, I know he missed a game or two there. Dak Prescott, again, missed some games. But in average points per game, the younger guys still did better than the older guys on average. I think I think Trey Lance would have fit into that somewhere in the middle of those two groups, honestly. I don't think he would have been at the top where Justin Fields was.
No, I don't think so either.
But I think he would have been very comfortably in the Derek Carr to Aaron Rodgers range.
Yeah, I agree. So I think on paper, yeah, that would have worked out for you had Trey Lance actually played the season. So good call on that. I'll give you a half point on that one.
I'll take it. I'll take a half.
And just to go on a bit of a tangent here, did you see the most recent Aaron Rodgers article?
No,
or news?
No. Why?
Oh, he's going on a 4-day darkness retreat to contemplate his future in the NFL and with the Packers.
Can I ask one question and only one question about it? What the fuck is a darkness retreat?
So he's basically going out to the mountains in a cabin by himself for 4 days. No like phone, no TV, like no electricity.
Okay. He's going off the grid.
And he says no ayahuasca either. Sure. Like you're just going to spend 4 days in meditation without mind enhancing drugs.
He's got to say that in case the feds are listening. That's
I know. It's just like, give me a break. You just want to go get high for 4 days. I don't buy it.
That's the most Aaron Rodgers shit, of course. Do you ever get the feeling that Aaron Rodgers at this point is just trying to make people want to make fun of him? Because I do. I get the sense that that's what he's going for.
Maybe he's just trolling all of us
Yeah.
by like acting like a super douche. And maybe he's really not, but this is just like the long fucking con.
It's
I
like a
don't know.
persona. It's like
Yeah.
his supervillain persona that he's just absorbed and
Yeah.
taken on. I don't know.
So anyway, that was my little tangent there. But my quarterback bold prediction, and I feel like I'm going to give myself a half a point on this one as well.
You should.
I had Jalen Hurts will finish as the number 1 overall quarterback. He finished as number 3 in 14 games. So
Number
had he
1
played
points per game, though. So I
had
think you get a full one.
had he played out, he would have. I feel like he would have been the number 1 quarterback had he played those last few games of the season.
You take
So,
this proudly.
yeah.
Do not try to cut this one off at the knees. This is not a well, if this and this happened. No, dude, he was the number 1 quarterback in points per game and he played 14. Take that proudly.
I will take it then. If you're giving me the gold star, then I will take it.
Absolutely. It's second to only to, or number 2 on the list, I should say, Patrick Mahomes. Wouldn't you know? The 2 highest scoring fantasy quarterbacks, also pretty good for real life football.
Yeah, weird.
Shocker. Justin
All
Fields
right.
should get that memo.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this one like I want to talk about old people having sex. I don't. I don't want to talk about this, but I have to. It's running backs. And I said Cam Akers and Darrell Henderson will finish within 50 fantasy points of each other.
Did you mean 500 fantasy points of each other? Did you forget a 0 there?
I did not. But here's what I also want to say. I don't get the half point here. I won't pretend that I do.
No.
Cam Akers, 125 fantasy points. He obviously ended up doing better than Darrell Henderson, who had 73 fantasy points. But that's pretty fucking close. Is that 50? I didn't do the math on this, actually.
125 to 75? Yeah, that's 50.
Is it just 50? Is my math that bad?
Okay, you said 100. You said 125.
Let me get you to the decimal. 125 and a half.
All right.
To 73 and a half. I think it's just outside.
It's 52 points.
God damn it. The heart of what I was saying, again, I still maintain Darrell Henderson played 10 games. Cam Akers started off like shit, like garbage. My whole idea was like, don't even draft Darrell Henderson, but just both of these guys are probably going to be pretty bad. To start the year, Darrell Henderson was actually okay. He was usable for a couple of games.
Yeah, he was usable, and I traded for him, and then he proceeded to get released from the Rams, and is still a free agent at this point. So that felt great.
It wasn't great, but I maintain the heart of what I was saying is there. It played out to an extent, but no, I just missed the 50-point cutoff. So boo for that.
Well, had he not got cut and he continued up playing on with the Rams, it would have easily been within 50 points. Easily.
I think so. So. So I will take that. What was your running back bold prediction?
My running back was that Aaron Jones and Travis Etienne would finish as top 5 running backs. Now, I totally missed on this one. I'll admit. This one was not close. We had Aaron Jones finishing as RB8. So close. But we know this was a tale of the season where it was extremely frustrating to be Aaron Jones' manager because LaFleur decided not to use him in stretches of games or total games. And the fact that he finishes RB8 is very telling.
Wild.
And ETN finishes RB18. Definitely flash this year. Maybe part of that was first year coming back from a major injury that he suffered last year. So maybe they didn't use him as much as they had thought. But when James Robinson got traded, I was like, oh, wheels up. This is great. No, he just, nah. So I don't know what happened there. So yeah, total miss on my part there. I expected more out of both those players.
I think it actually ended up closer than I thought it was for the Aaron Jones portion of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was, and Travis did pick up at the end of the season. Like, I think it was from week 12 on or something that he ended up being, like the tits kind of. Although I think he still had some disappointing games in there as well. Now that I think about it, never mind, Dustin. Never mind.
All right. Hit us with your next one.
This one is brutal. I said T. Higgins will outscore Jamar Chase in more week-to-week matchups. That did not pan out. I don't have the full numbers on this. And I'll pull back the curtain a little bit. You did a switcheroo on us. I didn't know that we were talking about predictions tonight.
I know.
Initially. But that's okay. It's fine. Here's what I will say. T. Higgins was great when he was on the field, and they let him play. There were several games this where he played very few snaps, very frustratingly so. We didn't know that he was going to play very few snaps. Like there was a game in week 17 for your championship where he got a single target, and that was it. And he played like 1% of the snaps. There was a game a few weeks earlier in week 14 against Cleveland. He played 1% of the snaps. It was super frustrating because you didn't know if you were getting a healthy T. Higgins. It's like the old Julio Jones thing. It's always, well, you got to watch the pregame to see what he looks like out there in warmups, because otherwise we have no fucking idea. There was only 4 top 10 finishes for T. Higgins, though, this year. That was not the case for Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase was Jamar Chase, man. He fucking crushed it. He had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Actually, he only had 5 top 10s, but he did have a lot more of those like fringe top 10, top 20 kind of weeks where you felt a lot more comfortable with him. Even though he missed a good chunk of the season himself. He missed 5 weeks, I think it was. So going forward, I still love T. Higgins.
Oh, as you should.
Going all in on him in Dynasty. There's the idea that he's going to get traded or cut. You know, the Bengals cannot absorb the contract that he wants for next year. There's so many landing spots where he would become the de facto target hog.
I think pretty much anywhere he would go, he would instantly become the number 1 wide receiver. Unless you were to plop him on a team with like Justin Jefferson. Right. You know, a similar situation to what he's got here. Yeah. I mean, just totally playing just out there landing spots. Say like he landed on like Dallas. I think he would be the number 1 over CD Lamb there.
It's literally just thinking about CD Lamb for this purpose. And like, I think it would be extremely close, but it's not going to be as close as Higgins to Jamar Jefferson. Like that is a step down.
Right.
Nope, no disrespect to CeeDee Lamb, but that's a step down from Jamar Chase.
Absolutely.
So I agree with you there. If he goes to some place like the Giants, I'm going to be a little bit bummed, but I'm going to, I think, be okay with it overall because like the
fantasy production should be there. Yeah.
So many targets should be there. So I missed on this, but I still am okay with the intent. How do you feel about your wide receiver one?
Hey, this is another W for me. So this one was the Jaguars wide receiver core will outscore the Broncos wide receiver core.
Don't even look at the stats.
I say you don't. I mean, I did just to make sure it actually panned out. But yeah, I'll just say it. So wide receiver cores, Jacksonville was 633.2 and Denver was 494.9. Obviously, Patrick that got hurt. The whole Broncos offense was just a fucking dumpster fire this year with Hackett there. We should see things improve next year under Sean Payton, a better offensive mind, better scheme. Hopefully someone that can, lift up Russell Wilson and kind of all facets of the offense here because they have a really good defense. So yeah, I expect better things out of Denver. I expect Jacksonville to do even better than they did this year. Let's be honest, I'm a stan now for Jacksonville. But yeah, that's a big W for me.
That's huge. That's a huge one. And if there's a theme of 2022 for us, it's Jacksonville is great. Eat it, everyone, and enjoy this going forward. So I love that. I'm glad that you got to relish that one more time. I'll be very curious to see what happens with the Broncos wide receiving core. Speaking of that coaching change with Sean Payton being there, I don't know. That'll be interesting if they can get it back together. maybe you can send out a lowball offer for Cortland Sutton still, maybe. And I might try. Jerry Jeudy, I don't think you can. I think his value is what it is.
Maybe, but it's not like he had an outstanding season this year when he was like, I mean, I know Cortland Sutton was held. It's just, I don't know. I feel like except for like Javonte Williams, I feel like every other piece on that offense is just depressed in value because of how bad they were this year. And right now is not the time to try to trade for any of those pieces with that Sean Payton bump.
Right.
But I mean, give it like a month or so when things kind of die down. People are looking forward to like free agency and the rookie drafts and everything. Yeah, Cortland Sutton definitely will be a value. I think you could probably get Jerry Jeudy at a bit of a discount as well.
Well, I will try. I will wait that month. I will wait until the rookie drafts come about and see if I can make some moves there because I'm interested. I'll go back to the well. We'll see. Sean Payton already said that all of Russ's personal coaches got to go. They can't be in the building. So I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tight ends. Let's do it. Let's finish this damn thing with tight ends.
Hey, we're bringing it. We're bringing it full circle here. We started with our tight end recap. We're going to end with tight ends. It's a perfect circle.
Oh, we were both on the same track with this. And I said no tight ends will finish inside the top 20 overall skill position players. This was excluding quarterbacks. I just said of all the position players, none of them are in the top 20. So don't draft one early, you fools. Wait like me and draft one in the super late rounds. What an idiot. Who allows me to say things like that? Because Travis Kelce, with quarterbacks included, was the 12th overall fantasy score with quarterbacks included. If you take them out, he was the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 overall score on the year. He was the only one. No tight end came close to getting into it otherwise. So I'm going to pretend that I get a quarter of a point, but I don't. That's atrocious.
No, I'm sorry, you don't get it, and I get like negative like a million points for this take. Let's be honest. Mine was Travis Kelce will have less than 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. The whole reasoning was, hey, they've got a bunch of these wide receivers that came in. Tyreek Hill is gone, who was the other focal point of this offense. They're going to spread it around more. You know, they're going to get CEH more involved. You know, the Jerick McKinnon, Isaiah Pacheco. You know, they're going to get their running backs involved in the passing game. So they're just going to be more of a spread offense instead of focusing on Kelce and Hill. Wrong. In fact, it went more to Kelce and everyone else was just role players rather than the other way around. So yeah, he had 1,300 yards, 12 touchdowns, just a fucking stud. Period.
The studliest.
And as we said early in the episode, I will bring it back again. Draft Travis Kelce early, and he's just going to continue to produce until he doesn't. And he's going to die in your roster, and that's okay. And I would be willing to take that chance on him come redraft for the next few years until we just don't see it anymore. Like I would have no problems drafting him early. Like I know you said you're going to next year.
Yeah.
But until we don't see it anymore, there's no reason not to draft him early.
There's an argument to be made that he's a top 2 draft pick next year. And I will probably make it later in this offseason, but not now.
Oh, I hope you have the number 2 pick in our redraft league next year, just so I can be like, oh, Kelce, it's on the board. Let's just put it on there right now.
I'll be a man of my word. You know that the year prior when I said he was like a top 6, top 7 or whatever, I did it, damn it. And it didn't work out as well as it did this year. And so it all comes around. But that's
you can't fault him for having one perceived down year where he's not scoring quite as high as other wide receivers in the league.
I know, but I did. Do we dare, by the way, I know we're running a little bit here up against it. Do we dare sneak in anything for like a best ball DFS underdog thing?
If you want, otherwise, if you just want to do one last beer bet for the season,
Now
that
you
we
talk my language.
pay off in a couple weeks because I know you're
That's
not
the
going to be
one.
here next week.
True.
So we'll have to pay that off when you return.
Yeah.
But if you just want to do one, I'll let you pick this
Let's
one.
do it. Oh, you just want the first pick out of this.
I feel like I was the last one that did our beer bet here.
You probably are right. Yeah, that's probably true.
Because we did. Let's see. We did the wide receiver room versus wide receiver room. Philadelphia, San Francisco was our last one.
That's right.
And I think that was mine. Okay.
I think you're right. All right. There's only one bet that I actually want to do for this. I don't want to fuck around. I don't want to make this ridiculous. I want Jalen Hurts versus Patrick Mahomes. That's it. Total fantasy points. Yeah. Which is actually hard to track, by the way. Super Bowl, they don't do great tracking, a lot of these fantasy apps. So we'll have to figure out a way to track that down, I suppose.
Give me Hurts.
Hurts it is. All right. Hurts v. Mahomes.
I feel like they'll be able to pull that up off of like Underdog or something because they usually have their fantasy points.
That's true.
Games.
That's
or
true.
Pick'ems. So we should be able to look on there, or maybe I'll do one of those with the by fantasy points instead of like yards or something, just so it's I have it logged there.
Logged and ready to rock.
Use as a reference. Yeah.
I like it. Well, yes, I will be gone next week on vacation in Mexico. God, that's going to be great.
I am so jealous.
Cannot wait for that warm weather. But the week after, we'll discuss a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I will be here for sure next week, regardless. Talking wide receivers, whether it's a solo show or I find someone to attempt to fill Jake's spots. I mean, no one's Jake out there, so we'll see if we can try to get like 3/4 of Jake, but at a minimum,
somebody less than Jake. Band name reference. Boom.
Nice.
Nailed it.
So yeah, we'll be back for sure, but then Jake will be returning with us in a couple weeks. Enjoy this last week of football that we have. Sit down and watch all the pregame stuff that starts at like 11 in the morning for the Super Bowl, all the like road to the Super Bowl stuff. Because this is the last of football we get until free agency starts in a month. But even that kind of dies off pretty quickly until the draft. That's very short-lived. So we're getting into the black hole here of the non-point scoring season. So enjoy this while you can. It's the last real football till August. So enjoy it while you can, folks. And until next week, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.